It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Manny the Martyr. And now, on with the show! Hey everybody, it's the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. My name is Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey gang.
And Les Webster.
Hello all.
How are you guys doing?
Doing alright.
Doing well. How about you?
Alright. Sorry about last week, guys. Unfortunately, I was a little under the weather, and we all kind of decided to take a little bit of a break, but we're back now.
I was having a week from hell. That's what I was doing. So it was good timing for me.
Well, I've been having a couple of weeks from hell, but I was also dealing with a sinus that was kicking my butt. But I'm doing better now, and here we are. So, what's been going on?
Well, I got something this week that I'm totally blaming on you, Tom.
Oh, yay.
Okay, not totally.
Wow.
We'll call it 75% you and 25% my own nefarious purposes. I've been, for the last, month or so, I've actually started kind of lurking on Twitch.
Woohoo!
Yeah. And I did it, you were the one who gave me the idea, but I did it for a different purpose. Also, something else I haven't mentioned before, for the last, couple of years off and on, I have been playing DDO, Dungeons and Dragons Online.
Okay.
And I'm not like a real social player. I'm pretty much still, even 2 years in. Yeah, I know, big shock there, right? But I still feel like I'm kind of learning. And the reason I jumped on Twitch was because you had planted the seed in my head, and I realized, hey, I didn't know if they had anybody streaming DDO on Twitch, and I was like, hey, that would be an interesting way to learn stuff about how to play this game.
Right.
So I hopped on there and found out, yes, they in fact have an entire channel. They're not streaming 24/7, but usually 6 or 7 nights a week there's something going on, and it seems to be a pretty small but loyal group of people who are doing it and who are kind of hanging around watching. So I have learned a few things from it, and who knows, soon I might even break down and get an account or something, quit being a lurker.
Well, I'm not surprised that D&D Online is being streamed, because old-fashioned D&D is being streamed, and I'm like, and I've watched some of that, but I'm like, it is basically people sitting around the table for a couple.
Yeah, just talking. And that's the deal. It's theater of the mind, not necessarily theater of the. Well, and
right.
There are actual play podcasts out there too, but those, I'm kind of iffy on those. Some of them are really good, and the really good ones are good, but it's it's a lot of stuff being described. It's like, I almost hate to describe it this way, but I imagine a lot of gamers would. It's a lot like playing D&D without actually playing. So it loses something when you're don't actually have stakes in the game. So I imagine the Twitch stuff is the same for that.
Right.
But I actually heard that they're going to start, because they had started doing the Bob Ross shows. I had heard somewhere that they were actually going to start doing Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood the same way.
They have, and I was about to bring that up. The marathon started on the 15th, I believe, and they are showing them in chronological order. And I've started off with the black and whites during the 60s.
That's going to take a while, because that show was on the air a long time.
A long time. But it's they're doing a marathon to raise funds for PBS,
Oh, is that what it's
but
for? That's interesting.
at least this marathon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually okay with that. I think that's a good use for it.
And who knows what happens after the marathon? I'm sure there will be some kind of a schedule where they'll show them, and who knows they'll do. But yeah, it's kind of funny. It's just like doing the Bob Ross, which I know I've mentioned on the podcast before, watching some of that, and it's not only just watching the show, but actually checking out the comments that are made on the chat, which I laughed my ass off on a lot of the comments, and they didn't go dirty or negative or all that. It's just really kind of just some really funny comments. So I've kind of enjoyed that. So thank you for helping me lead into what I was going to say.
Well, that was actually your thing for this week?
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
I was not planned, people. Well. Not planned. Wow.
And, one of my favorite games that I watch, because anybody out there who's listening, I don't play video games, and I hadn't played video games in forever, but I do watch a lot of Twitch, and I watch, there are certain streamers I'll watch and certain games I'll watch. And I mentioned the one Dead by Daylight before. Well, a new download just came down a couple weeks ago, and it's been kind of interesting to see how the new killer and the facilities and that kind of works. But I'm really waiting for the 26th, which is not too far away. That's when the full release of Friday the 13th comes out. And from everything I have been reading and hearing, I really liked what I saw with the beta version that was played December, January, right around.
Yes.
I think it was late December, early January. Sure. Yeah. This is supposed to be 20, 30 times better than that, at least. But of course, you're talking about a beta and then a finished product. Obviously, there's going to be differences. But I can't wait because it looked like it was a lot of fun, and supposedly over 400 different kill animations.
Oh wow!
So that's going to be kind of interesting to see. Well, because you think about it, because there's seven different counselors that are going to be part of the game. So it's 7 versus the player who's playing Jason. And then one of those players, if they're killed, there's a possibility they can come back as another character. And those who are fans of the franchise will know the name Tommy Jarvis. That was the little boy that Corey Feldman played in 4, who defeated Jason, and then we saw him again in 6 as an adult, and that's the version that we see in the video game. So you're talking about 8 different characters. So what, 50 different kill animations for each character. So that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, you don't want it to get too.
Well, there's a lot of them going to be the same, but they're going to have to look different for each character and stuff. So yeah,
sure.
So it looks like fun. I can't wait. I know there's a lot of the streamers that are ready for it to drop so they can play it. So it was funny because I've noticed when you get on Twitch and you do the browse and you see all the games, you see how many viewers there are for each game. Mm-hmm. And League of Legends is always the most watched. There's always like hundreds of thousands watching. Yeah. On average, Dead by Daylight is around 3 to 4. Well, when the new DLC came down, it jumped up to over 20. And now it's back down to 4.
Well, sure. People come check out the new thing.
And okay, I've seen enough. I don't want to see more, and they moved on.
Right. They just want to see enough to see the new stuff, and then they're done for a little while, and then something will drop, and because they're getting notified somehow that a DLC is posted.
Yeah.
So they're probably like following like the game's Twitter account or something, and they get a tweet
Right.
saying, "Hey, it's new DLC," and so they go hop on Twitch and watch for a little while.
Yeah.
I can totally see that.
Yep. How about you, Les? You been watching Twitch recently?
I have been marathoning myself.
Ooh, that's a pretty smooth segue.
The new series is coming on Showtime, and Showtime is posting the original episodes of Twin Peaks.
Oh, yeah. I keep hearing about this online.
And I am just so happy to sit and watch the old episodes. And by doing so, putting things together that I missed when it first showed. Because it was one of those programs that they really didn't do reruns of. The first series was 8 episodes. Second season was 22 episodes. I'm about halfway through the second season, and it's just been so much fun. And now I'm wondering what they're going to do to bring it back to the small town of Twin Peaks. I want to say population of 51,201, something like that. Except now, we're a Palmersted, so you got to drop that down anyway.
Scratch her off of the city limit sign.
Yeah, and I also find it's going to be fun to see who they bring back. I know Kyle MacLachlan is signed on for it, so Special Agent Dale Cooper will be there. And he was the driving force of the original series. This was and is a very quirky program that broke a lot of bonds. It opened up things that weren't done on television before or on a police or crime program prior to this. So trying to catch all the quirks and make my way through some of the slower parts, that you get through a slow part and you go, wow, that wasn't as slow as I thought it was. It moved the story along fairly well. This was David Lynch. I think it was one of his first forays into television. And he had some, the man that comes to mind is Jack Nance, who has been, who was a favorite of Lynch. He did Eraserhead. And the stars they do have with Peggy Lipton and Richard Beymer and some of the people that became famous because of this program. It's just great fun to sit and watch. And yeah, now I do want to know what's going to happen to bring a story back to life that's been gone for 20, I want to say 25 years. Or no, it's even more than that.
It's pushing 30.
Closer to 35.
Was it
because, I'm sorry?
Was it that early?
Wow. Was it 30 or 35 years? Because I equate it with a travel we did with my parents, and when we got to our destination, they were advertising the program, and I was going around telling them, buy me a beer and I'll tell you who did it. So
first episode date was April 8th, 1990.
So yeah, 27 years.
So it's one that you won't forget. It's definitely got a theme song that you will not forget. So if you get a chance, go to Showtime On Demand and just prepare yourself to sit and watch all 30 episodes and just sit knowing that you're going to enjoy the ending of it too.
Cool. Alrighty. Before we get into this week's topic, I want to take a couple minutes to say thanks to our sponsors for their support. First off, I want to do a shout out to Make Mine Indie, the digital catalog for print digital web comics that are not necessarily available through Diamond distributors. If you go to our website, www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, and click on our sponsors tab, you will see information for their catalog and a link where you can get a free catalog either as a PDF or a CBZ file. The spring catalog is out right now. It's 114 pages, if I'm not mistaken, full of previews, reviews, and interviews for some pretty interesting books. Some of these Mikey and I have checked out, and we have done some reviews on our website, so you can check them out. But definitely get a chance to download the catalog and see some interesting stories and some beautiful art. Go check that out.
Yep, and just as a side note, if you are a comic creator and you have a comic that you would like to at least take a look and see if you can get it in there, submissions for the summer, I just saw on, I think it was on Twitter today, the submissions for the summer have been extended.
That's good.
So you've still got a couple of weeks if you want to try to get your book into Make Mine Indie.
Yeah, there you go. Awesome. That's good to hear. It's been extended. Now you get a chance to have your stories being seen by a broader audience. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to thank Things from Another World for sponsoring the fellowship. A lot of good deals going on right now. Several trades and comics are on 70 to 80% off. Those are good through the end of May. But there's also their evergreen deals of 40% off certain comics, statues, toys, and merchandise. 30% off pre-order manga titles, and 50% off Nick and Dent comics and trades. So if you, while you're on our sponsors page, just scroll down, you'll see some information for Things in Another World. You click on one of those images, it'll take you to their website, and now let them know that we sent you to them, and take advantage of some of these awesome deals that are going on right now. Alrighty. You tell being off 1 week, I'm kind of rest up that quickly in a week. Wow, okay. Well, like I said, I had been a little ill, so bear with me. So for this week, guys, do you know what happened 40 years ago this week?
Sergeant Pepper taught the band to play?
There you go. There's that, too.
That was more than 40 years ago. That was 50 years ago, but yeah.
A certain movie came out. It was just a little movie, and no-name movie. Nobody heard anything about it, and I think there may be a few people have heard about it since then. It was called Star Wars. Are you familiar with it?
There was something about how it essentially created the summer blockbuster, but other than that, no.
Okay, awesome.
That and Jaws, but anyway.
Yeah. May 25th, 1977, Star Wars was released, and things have never been the same. Certainly, in my world, it
changed things.
It definitely changed things. It changed a lot of people. So for this week, we were wanting to kind of reminisce about our first viewings of the film, and then kind of just talk about its impact, obviously, and go from there. So
our little tribute.
Yeah, just a little tribute to this little film. This little film that nobody really has heard of. So who would like to go first?
I was there for opening weekend, and it was a movie that floored me. That's all I can say about it. It just had so many things in it that were utterly fascinating. This was a movie that had accomplished something no movie like it had, and it was not a really anticipated movie. This one was kind of under the radar as it first opened. And when it did, word of mouth made this movie what it is, what it's known for. I do not recall advertisements on television for this movie until after I had seen it. And that opening weekend, I went on Saturday with some friends. Afterwards, I called the girl I was seeing at the time and said, "We're going to the movies tonight." Saw it again. And then on Sunday, I took my brother to see it, who was, 8, I guess, at the time. And each time I was enthralled that much more. Seeing it now still fascinates me, especially on the big screen. I think I'm like most everybody else, as when the opening scene is progressing with the rebel cruiser trying to outrun the Imperial ship. It was something that we had not witnessed before, and that opening scene still gets me moving. It just makes me so happy to see something like that, because it was, I've said it before, and I'm sorry to iterate, but it was just something unseen. The images, the creation of the ships by hand, these were not mass manufactured. They were bits and parts of things thrown together and say, "This is our ship." And it's changed my life. But all joking aside, I thought it was one of the great space operas that took a lot of stories or ideas from previous things. Everything from Japanese film to Buck Rogers or something like that on television. So I was taken aback, loved it, seen it well over 25 times now at the theaters. And
wow.
If they release it again, I'll probably be there.
I wouldn't put it past them either.
No.
Well, Gina and I did go to a showing when it was re-released at one time, and this is prior to the big hoopla they did with the
special editions.
Special editions, thank you. I'm standing in line, and some kid was saying, "I've seen this 3 times," and another kid said, "I've seen it too." And the kid turned to me and said, "How many times have you seen it, mister?" And I said, 17. Believe me, I was their best friend right there.
I would have thought they would have just turned their backs on you and said, "Show off."
Shut up, old man.
Alrighty, Mikey.
All right. So my history with Star Wars is not as cut and dry as all of that. I was only 6 when the first movie came out.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't see the first movie. And honestly, at that point, wasn't paying any attention at all. This was like, it literally started, or came out like 4 months before I started school. So I didn't have a bunch of kids around to kind of impress it on me. And it didn't, I mean, I don't want to say it wasn't a big deal. I'm sure it was there, but it didn't make an impression on me as a kid until much later, of course. I did, this is messed up, but I actually did go see Empire in the theaters at the ripe old age of 9. Had no idea what I was walking into. Hadn't seen the first one. Honestly, hadn't really, like I said, hadn't paid that much attention to it. Didn't really, never thought about it. So didn't get it for the most part. And so I didn't really care when Jedi came out because I still, again, hadn't gotten into it. And by that time I was getting into Star Trek, so I was already distracted. So I didn't actually watch Star Wars until a few years later. I mean, I was probably in high school, I want to say. I'm not entirely sure. A lot of that childhood thing is a blur to me, but so yeah, I mean, and yeah, I agree. That first movie, it did a lot. And I don't want to take anything away, of course, because that's not why we're here, but for me, a lot of what made that movie work was the pacing. I mean, it just moved fast. And in order to move fast through stuff, there had to be a lot there. So they put a lot there, and they put a lot of different story elements into it. And it worked beautifully because it was paced like perfectly. Empire was, of course, paced a little differently, and they kind of went back to the same pacing with Jedi. It was maybe just a little slower, but not much. And yeah, I don't think anybody can argue with the impact that Star Wars had on a lot of things. I mean, I wasn't kidding when I said, I mean, I was kidding, but not about this. It was one of the first, what you would call summer blockbuster movies. I mean, that wasn't something that happened multiple times a year like it does now, because they simply weren't trying for that. Because there weren't a lot of blockbuster movies before that. It just wasn't a thing, which is a lot of why there wasn't a whole lot of marketing for that movie. I mean, that and any money around that movie that wasn't funneled directly into the movie was funneled into merchandising, not advertising. But hey, it worked. If nothing else, it did more. The merchandising did more for that movie than the advertising budget ever would have. You could spend double the amount of money on advertising. It wouldn't have helped as much. And so yeah, it became more than just a movie. It became a cultural event because it shifted the culture. It in a way, it was the start of making it okay to kind of be a nerd, because it was nerdy stuff. Whether George Lucas would admit this now or not, I don't know, but it was science fiction, which has long been that nerdy, been in that kind of nerdy realm. And I'm not. These are just names that have gotten thrown around in my life. I mean, I can't attest to everybody's experience, but I mean, that was why I was a nerd, basically, was because I read a lot of science fiction as a kid, a lot of fantasy. It kind of brought that into the fore, and it made it, in a sense, it made it okay. It sort of normalized it, I guess is probably the best way to put it. Which is which had a big impact on the culture and shifted the culture probably way more than any other movie in probably 10 years before that. And so yeah, I mean it's an event that deserves to be celebrated for sure. Whether every Star Wars movie deserves that kind of celebration is debatable, but that's not why we're here today. But I'm not. That's not me picking on anything in particular. That's just saying. But it's the kind of thing that the first one is always going to be the memorable one because it's the first one. I mean, the second one is like the first one, which is what people want, but it makes it less of an impact. So, that's just sort of how human psychology works, but whatever. And once I start rambling off into human psychology, then it's probably time for somebody else to talk.
I guess. When this came out, I was just a couple months away from turning 7. I had some recollections of movies that I've been taken to see before. I don't remember seeing the Apple Dumpling Gang, but when I saw it as I was older, I was like, I know this film. So I had obviously seen it when I was very young. Star Wars, I remembered everything. I mean, from the whole blast of music and the title up to the award ceremony at the end. Just about every scene I remember. I was just so enthralled, like y'all said. I saw a commercial for it, but it was already out because I didn't see it opening weekend. I'm not sure how long it had been out at that time. And y'all knew my dad. He was big into sci-fi. So he was interested in seeing it, and Mom usually went with us anyway. But a mind-blowing experience. I mean, it was just a lot of fun. Something just incredible visually. I mean, to this day, I still get chills when I hear some of the music. And yeah, I gotta stop down when that particular movie is on and watch. Doesn't matter where we're at. And I get nostalgic. I'm back to being 6 years old and just going, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. I can't imagine anything like that now. I mean, someone being a younger person seeing a movie and having that kind of an impact.
Right, that degree of wonder.
Some people compare the first Matrix to Star Wars, and to a degree I will agree with them, but I think it's still I still don't think it's the same. Because with the Matrix, yeah, visually it was incredible, but it's still not the same. And you talk about Star Trek and Star Wars, and some of this, and it's crazy now to think about a lot of the verbiage, the phrases, the sayings and stuff are in the vernacular now. Les, that's something that wouldn't have been possible before that. Was something like? Can you imagine anything like that before? Something like "May the Force be with you" or "Live long and prosper." Something like that wasn't really said a lot unless you were with fellow geeks, right?
True. Yeah, Star Trek phrases, especially those were around before Star Wars hit the screen.
Right.
So Star Trek phrases were used, but it was not done in secret, but it was done when you knew that your kind of people were going to be around you.
Right. When you're with fellow geeks or nerds or whatever term you want to use. But those terms, I mean, even now the Star Trek terms, they're in the, I don't want to say American vernacular because it's a world thing. It's a world phenomenon. You were gonna say something, Mikey?
Wow.
Well, I heard you take a breath, and I was like, oh, he's gonna say something. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I was just gonna throw in that was the kind of thing that happened before, but not on that scale. I mean, it was the kind of thing I mean, movies and by extension, kind of, I mean, other forms of entertainment, TV and honestly novels and magazines. I mean, there's that they exert that level they exert that kind of control over the language, but man, not to the degree of impact that happened in the 70s. Because honestly, I'll put most of what happened with Star Trek in the 70s as well, because Star Trek didn't have that big an impact when it was on the air in the late 60s. It didn't come into its strength until like the mid 70s. And I kind of have to wonder how much of an impact that had on the success of Star Wars as well. But anyway, that may be a topic for another show.
Well, supposedly they were working on a new TV series, a new Star Trek series. Mm-hmm. And then when Star Wars hit, Paramount was like, oh, okay. We got something like that. So they basically scrapped the show, and they had most of the cast brought back anyway, with the exception of Nimoy.
Right.
And so they decided to jump into doing it as a movie, and unfortunately they kind of rushed it, so a lot of things were sacrificed, and we got the film that we got.
Right. Yeah, because Phase 2, Star Trek Phase 2, they had started talking about that as soon as the animated series was over, which was
right.
That pretty much ran in 73, was it? I think it was right around 72 or 73, somewhere in there. Maybe I'm off by a year or two, but yeah. So Phase 2 they had been talking about that since that point, and so by 77. I mean, it had been on again and off again, and they weren't sure what they wanted to do, and they were pretty sure they were not going to get Nimoy, because he was pretty adamant he was already a troublemaker by the animated series, put it that way, because he was the one who threw them an ultimatum for the animated series. He was like, if you're not going to bring back more of the cast, I'm not going to do it. And good luck doing this without Spock. Good luck replacing me. And so the network caved a little bit and gave him what he wanted, sort of. So and he had by then already expressed that he didn't want to do Spock anymore. And so anyway, tangent time. So when Star Wars was really, 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 really successful in 77, they were like, hey, we've got this thing, maybe we should make it into a movie, like you said, and kind of went on from there. But and then once the first movie kind of didn't do well, they brought in some outside help. But again, that's a Star Trek topic, not a Star Wars topic.
Yeah.
They lived off one another. They fed off one another. You had Star Trek with its basic. Star Wars came out and upped the game, so Trek responded. Wars took a look at what Trek did, responded, and as a result, it just became an elevation game for each of the groups. Trek went on to do Next Generation, and that was because they were kind of forced to it because the age of their actors from the original series, and which would probably not have come back for the originals for another television show. But the Star Wars group also had to think of things that may be similar to what was on Trek, either rename them or change them a bit, and Trek did the same thing. So to me, they fed off one another to escalate the game.
Sure, and they're also both feeding off of what also became kind of a sci-fi renaissance in that time otherwise, because you're starting to get, I mean, you get to the early 80s and you're starting to get some of the major sci-fi novels of the 20th century. I mean, stuff like Neuromancer comes out in 83 or 84. I mean, that was a groundbreaking novel and touched on not necessarily some of the same ideas, but pulled from other sources in the past, the same way Star Wars and Star Trek always did, and built on them. And so, again, raised the bar even more, like you said, like you're saying. And it just kept going and going. And there, I mean, just tons and tons. The 80s were huge for science fiction. It was for science fiction. It was, like I said, kind of a renaissance. Lot of new and cool and interesting stuff coming out then.
So let me ask you this then. What is your thoughts of the trilogy that we got, the classic trilogy? You kind of touched on it a little bit, Mikey. Were you pleased on how it turned out? And did you think we would even see any more? Did you think we would ever see any more Star Wars films? And I'll go ahead and answer that one, saying no.
Why is that?
Well, there was about a 16-year gap.
It's a long time to wait.
That's a long time. That's a long time. Yeah, it's a long time to wait to do another one. And you figured, you know, if it was being done now, there would have been a lot of push for him to do more films. And I'm sure there was a lot. I'm sure he had a lot of pressure even then. After Jedi, it's like, okay, you got to do another one. And he said basically, I guess he obviously said no. And they didn't make, they couldn't make him change his mind. And I guess they were okay. Well, they may not have been okay with it, but yeah.
They couldn't force him.
They couldn't force him.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I didn't think we'd ever see anything else either. I suppose the best I would have hoped for at the time would have been maybe a TV series of some sort.
Yeah.
That was a long time coming too, and to do it animated was definitely the way to go, I thought. But
it made the most sense.
Right. I mean, in a way, it's the easiest. I mean, animation's not necessarily easy, but it was easier than some of the alternatives.
It's easier to do that than to do a live action with all the effects and all. We have seen shows where they at one point they had all the money they could for special effects for a show, and the budget was quickly cut. Example, classic Battlestar Galactica. I mean, there was even complaints for the Next Generation, Star Trek Next Generation, about the budget for the special effects. Mm-hmm. And at that time, it was. I don't even want to hazard a guess how much the percentage was CGI, because all the space stuff was CGI at that point.
Yeah.
So, and that wasn't cheap back then. We're talking 30 something years ago.
Yeah, Next Gen started in 87.
Oh, so it's that's right. It's the 30th anniversary of Next Gen. That's right. So, yep. But even even if when we got the prequels, I remember sitting and seeing the ending credits for Revenge of the Sith, and I kind of teared up. I'm like, this is it. There's no more. The story is the story is basically told. There's
no reason in the world for George Lucas to make another one of these things.
Yeah. And honestly, I didn't. I figured I never thought there would be a day that he would give, that he would sell, and I just, figured, okay, that's it. And
it would be after he died. I mean, that's pretty
right.
much what anybody was hoping for, in a way. As twisted as that sounds, every Star Wars fan in the universe who wants to see more Star Wars is silently wishing for George Lucas to die so that we can somehow get more Star Wars. Because there's no way he's going to do it, and there's no way he's ever going to sell. And lo and behold, Disney offered him enough money and enough, I guess, influence over future stuff.
So, what were you thinking, Les?
When he did Return of the Jedi, I knew that there would be something else, because that was his plan. I remember reading that he wanted to do 9 movies, and he was going to pace them at 3 years a movie. And I thought, when I'm 51, I'm going to get to see the last chapter. Well, lo and behold, that didn't happen. And I can understand that you have other things on your mind. But as a follower, I wanted those every 3 years. Just so I could say, this is how to run a series. It has been one of the most profitable series in movie history. It's just unfortunate that it had such huge gaps in it. It had a larger gap than they had for Star Trek. And as a result, to me, the episodes 1 through 3 were a little weak by comparison. But he made episode 4 not knowing if he was going to do any other films of this group. And because of that, he tried to pack in as much as he could in this one story to say, I did a great job. And yes, by the influence it has had over the genre of science fiction, it's the benchmark. There are so many programs, there were so many movies that were stealing ideas from A New Hope. A Battlestar was a complete takeoff of the little engine that could type film. And to me, that was a major right there. I'm probably talking through my hat now. But
you want another example? I'll give you another example of movies that were created solely to rip off the Star Wars phenomenon. The Spy Who Loved Me, James Bond movie, came out in '76. And the end credits, it said, because back in that time they would say at the end credits it would say James Bond will return in whatever the name of the next movie is. In The Spy Who Loved Me, it says, and you
For Your Eyes Only,
it says James Bond will return in For Your Eyes Only.
Yep.
The next James Bond movie to come out was Moonraker, because they had to find a way to make some money off of that phenomenon.
Yep.
So they had a James Bond movie in space with a space battle with laser guns and everything.
God.
That is actually that movie. Anyway.
That's why I sighed too.
Yes, absolutely. which sucks because the book was actually really good. But anyway, it's a very different book. It's a very different story from the book, but that's true of most of those. The books were written in a different era, so you just kind of have to let that go and enjoy the books as they are.
Right.
But yeah, so they literally jumped in with an entirely different movie that they could somehow cash in on the space thing. Clearly not understanding what it really was about, but anyway. Yes, and then, so Moonraker came out in 79, I believe, and then For Your Eyes Only got stalled off until 81. Yeah, so there's another example of a pretty damn successful movie franchise that jumped on the bandwagon.
Which was not the first time they did that.
No, not really. But that's all right. In a way, that's sort of how the Bond franchise managed to stay relevant as long as it did. Was
right.
They kind of rode the wave a little bit. Sometimes it worked well, sometimes it didn't. Moonraker didn't.
And I'll turn that back to the Star Wars. You mentioned For Eyes Only. The actor who played the villain, John Glover, I believe, was also in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
And he's also in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So, one of the few who faced off against Indy and James Bond and worked with Vader. That's awesome thing that's your resume.
That is one hell of a resume right there. Yep.
So, we are a few months away from Episode 8. And there are rumblings that we may actually have another trilogy some point down the road. There may be a little bit of a break. Because obviously right now we're doing a movie a year. Whether it's the trilogy itself and then the they're calling them anthology films, but I'm not sure that's exactly the right term, but
yeah.
So, you have any thoughts on what we might be seeing down the road, or you're just going, I'll just take it in as it comes, and just we'll see what we'll see.
I don't know. I'm not prepared to make any predictions about the Star Wars franchise as it stands now. I don't have any idea what their plan is. I don't know beyond this point, beyond the current trilogy. I don't know how they're going to continue with the Skywalker thing. I mean, there might be a way to pull it off, but I don't see it at this point. I mean, maybe by the end of Episode 9 I will, but right now I don't see how they can keep doing it. I mean, clearly they are not going to be able to keep doing it with the big three, the Holy Trinity.
Right.
And for various reasons, not just for the obvious reasons, but I mean, they're just not going to be able to keep doing that. Whether they should have this time or not is probably another debate. But so I don't know where they're going to go from this. I don't know. I actually hadn't heard anything about it, another trilogy after this, so I don't.
Well, like I said, it's just rumblings. I think there were some people that were expecting some kind of official announcement at Celebration, and we did not get that. And to be frank, I'm not surprised because the focus now is Episode 8, the Han Solo film, which is next year. And then they're supposed to start filming Episode 9 in the not too distant future. Now, obviously, they have to if they're expecting.
Right, it's a lot of post-production in a movie like that.
So. Well, and they actually moved it up, so Episode 9 is actually going to have a May release instead of December.
Oh, so they're going to do it in a year and a half.
Yeah, so they're really going to be pushing Episode 9. Damn. They're really going to be working on it. Yeah. At least that's the plan right now. And that concerns me a little bit because I don't want. This is the concluding chapter of the trilogy, and this is one you really don't want to be messing up by
Rushing
cutting down.
yourself, yeah.
Exactly. But
Well, I mean, if there's an upside, it's that the film's probably written already, or at least well on its way to being written. So, I mean, it would have made sense to keep writing when you're writing 8. I mean, you already know what the story's going to be by then. So why not just finish it,
right.
get it written? I mean, you can make changes before you start principal photography on it because you're going to want to get some sort of reaction from 8, just to have some control over it. But yeah, so I mean that cuts some of that time down. You can save a little time there. We'll put it that way. Yeah, don't rush post because it will show.
Yep.
Very, very quickly. People will understand. People will see that it's just not the same quality. But yeah, beyond that, I don't know. I can't imagine where. I mean, I can easily imagine them continuing to make movies as long as they're continuing to make money. But I don't have a clue where the stories will go at that point. I don't think anybody can know that.
I want to see them get it out on a Memorial Day weekend to give Lucas the Memorial Day weekend back that he established. His Indiana Jones movies came out on Memorial Day weekends. Star Wars did. They've been overrun now by the other entity owned by Disney. And as a result, uh, the Star Wars has suffered. I have not seen Rogue One. I know the basis of it because it was established in A New Hope. To me, it would have probably been more well received on the Memorial Day weekend than it was in the dead of winter.
You mean that whole Christmas release thing?
Yes.
Yeah, see.
To me, Christmas release is more of that genre. You don't want to do Halloween 16 on the week before Christmas. Why would you want to mess that up? Why would you want to mess Star Wars up by releasing it a few weeks ahead of Christmas?
Primarily because they know kids have a couple of weeks off. That's why. Which is the same reason why they did the Lord of the Rings at Christmas. Because it really is almost a mini summer there for a couple of weeks because kids aren't in school. So why not go to the movies? Now, admittedly, you don't need snow tires to go to the movies on Memorial Day. I will grant you that. At least in some parts of the country. But yeah, I mean, it's a way to try to generate some cash flow in a time when they didn't at one point have a whole lot of cash flow because all that got released was Christmas movies, like you said. But the kids are already out of school, so let's see if we can get their butts in the seats at the movie theaters, make a little money at it.
But who of the younger group is aware of the story of Rogue One?
Yeah, my kid honestly didn't really know anything about it either. And as much as it surprises me that you haven't seen it, I have to admit I actually passed on the opportunity to see it. We actually picked it up from Redbox so that Alex could watch it because he wanted to watch it, and I just didn't bother. I went in the other room. I didn't want to see it. I didn't care. It didn't hold any interest for me at all. And it's a different enough kind of story that it just didn't strike me as a Star Wars story. So, despite the fact that was like the subtitle, a Star Wars story, like, yeah, no, it's not. and no amount of subtitle is going to make it that way for me. Anyway, I don't really want to bag on Rogue One here, but yeah, I mean, honestly, the reason they released it at Christmas is money, plain and simple, because they think they don't have to compete with the rest of the summer blockbusters, and because The Lord of the Rings showed that movies can make money being released in December.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Ben-Hur was released in November, and it did very well. So yeah, the movies are there.
Ben-Hur had Jesus as a character. I mean, come on. You can get away with releasing that at Christmas.
Yeah, but people came to see the chariot race.
Blessed are the cheesemakers. What?
People came to see the chariot races. Blessed be the cheesemakers. Jiminy Christmas.
Oh, the meek. That's what he said. The blessed are the meek. Oh, isn't that nice?
Mm.
Okay, try to pull this out of the ditch now.
The Monty Python ditch?
Yes. I do want to see something that's going to have the good story. I wish they would use the non-canon material for some of their storylines, because I would like to see the idea of Mara Jade being in the movie. I would like to see that there were 3 children by Han and Leia, and they all were blessed with the Force. You know, in the books, they went on to do the Academy. And at the first of the Academy books, Luke was the instructor. He was the teacher. He was the Yoda form to new things. And with their last movie, the official Star Wars movie, they really pulled away from that.
They took it bleak, that's for sure.
Yes. And I'm not saying that I want rainbows and unicorns, but
yeah, you do.
No, not really. But let's bring it back into form. Yeah, how many novels have been done that, to me, well, personally, I would say there are 30 good ones that could be used and characters that could be used. They do use one of them now on a major one on the Rebels animated. And to me, he was huge in 3 books, 3 novels. He was a major force.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if they would bring some of that back to the live action films, I would be there with my money begging the people to take it. Force Awakens, to me, had already been done at least twice in that series. So I would like to see them be a little more open-minded and put some of the written material into the films, because I think that it would give them a better front, something to move with.
Right. And the deal there is that the thing about A New Hope was that it was groundbreaking. I mean, which is what we started this whole discussion off with. It was a groundbreaking movie. Force Awakens didn't really break any ground. And if they want to make that blow up again like it did in 1977, 40 years ago, they're going to have to break ground. And I don't know that... I'm going to get us in trouble. I don't know if Disney has the spine to do it, to be honest. I don't know if Disney has got the backbone to do something new. Maybe the trilogy after this one, like you said, Tom, maybe they'll do something new because they're not going to be able to go to the Skywalker well again.
Right.
Maybe they'll have to. Whether it will be something new or something rehashed somehow, I don't know. I find it hard to believe they'll do something truly groundbreaking. I think as long as these films continue to be an homage to the first one, then it's doomed. Eventually, it will stop making money until they do something new. 40 years is a hell of a run, though.
Mm-hmm.
Give them credit for that.
Think of all those movies or television shows that have come and gone. Those that have attempted the success that Star Wars did. You talked earlier about the merchandising, and that was unheard of at that time. We didn't even have kids' television shows that were promoting a toy that was tied to the program, to the television program at that time.
Yeah, that's a whole genre of TV show that got invented based on Star Wars.
Yes.
I mean, the entire 80s. Yep.
Yep. I'm not sure what I would want to see in a future trilogy. I don't know. I'll be honest, I'm not sure if I want one. I mean, obviously, you're right. The Skywalker story is going to end with 9. Now, could we get another trilogy of films with the kids? Yeah, with Rey and Finn and Poe and them. Assuming they survive the films, yeah, we could probably do that. And they're likable enough characters. But I just don't know. I think we've kind of discussed the prequels before and some of the good things about them and bad things. I think one of the things that suffers from it, or at least my problem with it, is, and I noticed it when I was watching because there was the other day they were showing the films for the May 4th weekend. They didn't have the kind of chemistry that the classic characters did. And we I think I touched on this when we were doing our answer to questions. Really would have loved to see more of the Obi-Wan Anakin relationship. They talk to each other like they're brothers, but I didn't get that vibe. You didn't feel like they have been friends for all these years and been from one side of the galaxy to the other and experienced all these things. And it just, I think that's part of my problem with the prequels. Is there was definitely a different vibe. It's not as much fun as the original trilogy was, and the trilogy got dark. Empire was kind of dark, but it just wasn't the same thing. And can these kids have their own films and have that kind of chemistry? They probably could.
They could. I mean, but there's a lot of work. There's a lot of work going on there in the background for that to happen.
Right.
I mean, you could argue that the prequel trilogy didn't have that because, I mean, the two obvious reasons would be scripting and acting.
Right.
I mean, like you said, they partly just didn't have enough scenes together.
Yeah.
Where they're actually interacting. They're mostly just sort of fighting next to each other rather than interacting.
Right.
And
so
I don't know.
I don't know either, but we do have A New Hope, and I think we're so lucky that we have one. Such a great film, and I'm about ready to watch it again.
Well, yeah, maybe so.
Maybe not exactly at this minute, considering the time that we are recording this, but I will watch it again here real soon. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up and move on?
No, not for me. I'm good.
I'm spent.
All right. So when we come back, we'll have our weekly picks. And we're back. It is time for the weekly picks, and leading off is Mike.
I'm leading off, and I have a Dynamite book. My first pick is Vampirella. This is issue 3 coming out this week, and this is the kind of the new Vampirella in the Future storyline that was written by Paul Cornell that I was definitely curious about when I heard about it a few months ago when it first started, and I have to say it has lived up to everything I hoped it would be, and I had kind of high hopes for it. I was really hoping, I was hoping it would not erase all of the cool, interesting character stuff that recent Vampirella series have kind of given us from Dynamite, and it has also managed to kind of throw back to the old style Vampirella stories. That it has managed to do both is I am just delighted with. So I definitely recommend checking out this new series. Like I said, we're on issue 3. I do not know off the top of my head how long they're planning on running it. I'm kind of thinking it's probably ongoing at this point. I'm not sure, but find out soon enough, I guess. But it's definitely, I am very much liking it.
It seems that Dynamite runs a series about a dozen issues, and then it may end, although I'm not sure how long the first James Bond book has been going. It may have gone past that, but we've had I think that may be over with, and we're doing other miniseries now.
The Warren Ellis one.
Yeah.
It's that one's over. And I think it ran 2 arcs, and then they have broken out. I want to say there may be actually 3 series going right now for the James Bond thing, but they're pretty much by arc numbering them. They're like 1 to 6.
So.
But yeah.
So we'll get about 6 issues at least.
Yeah, I figure we'll get 6, and hopefully we'll get 12, and
yeah,
I'd love to see it go on from there, but they tend to start renumbering when they change out
creative teams and all that.
Yeah.
Cool. It's been interesting so far, definitely. Les.
My first choice is from American Mythology Productions, and it is Casper the Friendly Ghost, number 1. This is being brought to you by S.A. Check, John Gallagher, and Mike Wolfer. In this, you're going back to the 60s comics, the ones that were made famous by Harvey, the ones that were based on the cartoon shows. And in this one, Casper will also have 2 of his friends with him, Wendy, the Good Little Witch, and Hot Stuff, the Little Devil. These were some of my favorite characters when I was much, much younger. They were just fascinating to see how they handle the cartoon conversion into comics. It's a book that will probably make me remember the voices of the characters and placed into the comic book itself. This would be one of the few comics that actually does that for me, but really looking forward to it. And you've got three main characters intermingling with each other, or they may have their own stories, just like the older comics. But looking forward to seeing this one.
Man, it's been so long since I saw those. I had forgotten the little devil guy had a name.
Yeah. American Mythology's been doing real good with these properties. The Underdog book was phenomenal. It was just like the old cartoon. So, the Pink Panther was really good, and they've done a real good job with the Three Stooges one shots. So I've been totally digging this. So I'm on board for checking out this Casper and see how it goes.
Yep, their batting average is pretty good. So
yeah, I totally dug Underdog, and the free comic book day special was awesome too. So
yes, very true.
My first choice takes me back to Dynamite, but it's also with DC Comics, and this is Batman the Shadow #2, written by Scott Snyder and Steve Orlando, with art by Riley Rossmo. I dug the first issue a lot. It was so great. Batman is investigating the murder of Lamont Cranston, and the prime suspect is the Shadow. And so that's basically how the first issue ends. So now, with this issue, we're obviously gonna move from there, and at some point they'll join forces and all that. But it's been pretty cool so far. So I'm excited about this one.
This has been a good read too. Very strong story.
Yep. It was a very strong start, definitely.
Cool.
Mikey, up again.
Up again. All right. My second pick is a Dynamite book. Kind of a recurring theme happening this week with me. But, so, there's a new Pathfinder series starting this week, and this series is called Rune Scars. And if you're not familiar, which I know I've talked about it before, the Pathfinder comics. Pathfinder is a role-playing game that kind of spun out of Dungeons and Dragons back in the, I'm going to say mid-2000s. I could be a little off there. I didn't really look that up, but it basically spun out of 3rd edition D&D. And so a few years back, the folks at Paizo teamed up with Dynamite in order to use some iconic characters from their Pathfinder game in a comic series. And gosh, this is, holy cats, at least the 5th series arc, I guess, with these characters. And they've been consistently a lot of fun the whole way through. Even when Jim Zub left, they have still been good. I have really enjoyed each and every one of these arcs. And I mean, I'm a sucker for this sort of thing, of course, but it's right in my wheelhouse. But still, it's good stuff.
Very cool. Les, you were up again.
Okay, let's go with Die Kitty Die, Hollywood or Bust #1 by Chapter House Comics. This is a series that is returning. It finished its first run, and in it you were introduced to Kitty Ravencroft, a beautiful witch and someone who had her own comic book. Now, she has found that her fans want her to do more. So she's thinking, and finally does, capitalize on her popularity with a kitty movie. Well, this takes her to Hollywood, and she finds herself in danger again, just as she was in the first series. So you're going to have some of the funniest and scariest parts of Kitty's series in this one. And as a result, be sure to go back and get the trade for the first series. You'll know what's going on, but this will be a standalone also. You won't have to have it. But Thomas and I will attest that it is a very amusing read. And just because of that, this one will be worth picking up too.
Yeah, the first series was a trip. It was a nice little parody, kind of a satire look at the comic industry, and this one I think is going to be more to Hollywood, obviously, doing adaptations of comic book properties. So that'll be fun. Alrighty, my next choice is from Zenscope. It's a one-shot called Grimm Fairy Tales Wonderland Birth of Madness. And this is going to be the story of how Wonderland kind of turned dark, and it kind of turned from the paradise that one would think it would be into the land of nightmares that you know if you've been reading the series. So it's written by Dave Franchini, and I'm not exactly clear on who the interior artist is. So I apologize for that. But this is going to be curious. I'm curious about this one. We'll see where things go from there.
Could be fun.
Do we have? Yeah, should be. Any honorable mentions this week? Mikey, you got one?
Sure, I got one.
Okay.
And here's a shock. It's a Dynamite book.
But no Image this week.
I know.
Mark this down, kiddies.
I latched
no Image books from Mikey.
I latched onto Dynamite this week for some reason. It's just dumb luck, I guess. But I mean, the deal is that this is the final issue of the current running Red Team series, Double Tap Center Mass. This is a Garth Ennis book, and this is actually the second story in this kind of this. I hate to say world, but it's in this series, I suppose. And it's a really, really. I mean, this is issue 9, and it's the end of this arc, so kind of a long arc. Lots of fun stories, lots of Eddie and Trudy screwing up their lives and just being good cops along the way, but getting into a lot of trouble. So this is kind of the end of this arc, and we will see where this goes. And it's been a lot of fun.
Very cool. I mean, it's Garth Ennis. I mean, come on.
Right.
Alrighty, Les, do you have an honorable mention?
I do. From DC, we have a deluxe edition hardcover coming out of JLA Year 1. This was a 12-issue series that DC ran, and it was kind of redefining the beginning of the Justice League with the characters of The Flash, Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter, Aquaman, and Black Canary. And you look at this versus the Justice League that appeared in Showcase way back when. You actually have 4 of these characters were original members of the Justice League. But this series was really well done. In it, you had this group fight T.O. Morrow, the man who gave them Red Tornado. You also had Vandal Savage and the Brotherhood of Evil. This was stretched out over a year-long series, and it was worth every page.
Yeah, that was. I enjoyed that, and it's cool that it would be cool to see that as a collected form again with all the other stories as well. So I wouldn't mind checking that out again. My honorable mention is also from DC Comics. Is Batman Wildcat trade. Writers are Chuck Dixon, Bo Smith, and Bob Haney, with a ton of artists, including Jim Aparo, Irv Novick, Bob Brown, Dick Carty, Jimmy Mendoza, Tom Palmer, and Mike Esposito. This is collecting the miniseries Batman Wildcat, issues 1 through 3, and Catwoman Wildcat 1 through 4, which those were from late 90s, early 2000s, somewhere around there. And then several issues of The Brave and Bold, which I'm sure Batman Wildcat team-ups, obviously. Just another indication that the society's coming back. And I'm happy, but it's actually kind of cool to have this collection come out, because I remember getting those books when they came when they were originally released, but that's been so long ago. So it would be nice to kind of refresh my memory. Alrighty, any special shout-outs this week?
No, not for me.
I do have one.
Cool.
And the weekend of May 26th through the 28th in Dallas is the Famous Monsters convention in Dallas.
Okay.
Looking forward to this because some of the guests are top-notch. Riku Branning, who was played the creature from the Black Lagoon in a couple of the movies. You have Sarah Karloff, the daughter of Boris Karloff. You have Butch Patrick, who was Eddie Munster.
Eddie, yep.
Yeah. You have Michael Dorn and Marina Sirtis from Next Generation.
Cool.
You've got Bruce Harwood, Dean Haglund, and Tom Braidwood, known as the Lone Gunman on X-Files. You have the director, Shinji Higuchi, and the cinematographer, Keiichi Sakahure from Shin Godzilla. And then in this, there's somebody I'm definitely going to go see, and that is Christopher R. Mim.
Oh, yeah.
He's doing there. And this is a 3-day event. You can get your tickets online and take a look at the guests listed, because I'm really taken by this. To me, it's going to be amazing. You even have artists Basil Gogas and Carrie Gallen. And to have either one, well, I know Carrie is local, but to have he and Basil Gogas here is going to be well worth the time. That's what I got out of this. Thanks.
Cool.
Awesome. Yeah, this is actually the first Famous Monsters convention in Dallas, so very awesome. Okay, our regular shout-outs. First off, Manny the Martyr for the awesome music that we use for our podcast. Thank you, guys. They just performed their final concert But you still check out their music. We'll have a link in our show notes. There's also a link on our podcast page, so you can go check out their stuff. Check out the cool music. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for the support. And Godspeed on your journeys. Second of all, I want to shout out Potter Family on Twitter, the association of fellow podcasters who retweet other people's links. They've been kind enough to support us from day one, and we appreciate that. And Mikey and I have done our darnest to return that love. Any kind of podcast you can think of, you can find it there. All you gotta do is go to Twitter and type in hashtag Potter and Family, one word, and that will give you a ton of listings of some really cool people doing some awesome podcasts. And thank you guys for supporting us. Appreciate it very much. And finally, you, dear listener, thank you. Thank you for downloading this episode. Thank you for checking us out. We're always interested in your feedback. If you have a comment, question, suggestion, anything, just feel free to contact us. There's several ways you can do that. First way would be to go to our About Us page on the website, www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. Click on the About Us tab, and there's a contact form that you can fill out. Or you can choose the email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. You can contact us through social media. We are on Facebook. Feel free to like us there, and you can send us a message there. It's facebook.com/The Fellowship of the Geeks. Obviously, we're on Twitter. Feel free to follow us there. And it's at Fellowship Geeks. Mikey has a personal Twitter page, at Mikey Geek, and I have one as well, at TomTC Geek. Feel free to follow us and say hi if you like to, or just say, just you can kind of shout out, and we'll respond in kind. And for wherever you download this episode or other episodes, whether it's iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or if you're just listening to us on YouTube, please, please, please rate us, whether it's the star format or thumbs up, thumbs down, or whatever. Please do. And if you have an additional couple of minutes, a review would be awesome as well. Question of the week? Favorite Star Wars moment?
Yeah,
or favorite?
When how old were you when you saw Star Wars for the first time? Something
okay.
Like that. Yeah, anyway.
We can do that. We can do that. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I think
not that I can see.
Okay, so anything else before we sign off for the night?
Just the usual. Thanks, everybody.
Do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you for being back with us. We should be here, good Lord willing, for the rest of the year. We'll see what happens. Until next time, read more comics and support your local stores. We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook at The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,